running through the African continent. And many people view the U.S. as being complicit and maybe even quietly authorizing all of the horrors that are seen on social media. And the question becomes, how can they support this appearance of mass murder? And what does that mean about the integrity of the U.S.? So that's one of the prevailing discussions. And I think the sentiment on the continent overall is that without the U.S. backing Israel's behavior, these things could not go on like we see.
Yeah, I'm in kind of like in agreement with that. I don't know what political dagger is, that is going to have on our current situation, the election situation here in the states as well, because those who may be in the know and understanding politics and our relationship with Israel have to ask themselves that same question. Why is this continuing? And it seems like Netanyahu is doing pretty much what he wants to do. And the question that had arose some time back is, is there another? And that's the question that I always ask myself: is there another hidden agenda that is going on that involves, these northern hemisphere countries such as Europe and America as well? And that's something that maybe we can uh, touch on possibly a little bit later on. Also, just another intro question, Doc. As far as the political climate over there, I know sometime we we talked back and we was talking about the election as far as Ghana is concerned coming up, and you gave me your take on some of the people who may that is on the grounds on how they feel about the current president and some of the things that and the relationships that he may have had with America and Europe, that it may not be as peachy as some may think. And then some of the things that I think he with the Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso situation, that he was kind of like doing the bidding, you know, for some of these countries as well. So how is he lining up uh, with the next election coming up?
Well, the current, let me underscore something that you said in the intro. You said there may be a hidden agenda. Well, I think for purposes of our conversations about geopolitical behavior, we should always assume that there is a hidden agenda. Much of the hidden agenda is in plain sight. We just don't connect the dots, so we don't see it. So we should always assume that there's a hidden agenda. Some of it is readily available for us to see, and others we have to dig a little bit more. But nothing that we see on the surface should convince us that we understand what's going on. So that should be taken as a given. And it's just a question of how much investigating we want to do, how diligent we want to become, how informed we would like to feel like we are. And we know that no matter what we know, there's still so much information that's hidden from us that we are still speculating. At the end of all of our research, we're still
Hmm.
speculating because the arteries of global control are so intricate and so massive that it's very difficult to follow a straight line. Um, the thing that people need to understand about the African continent that I have become much more aware of is the neo colonial nature of the African continent. The former colonizing powers and the Western allies still have a significant stranglehold on the African continent, its economy, its education, its religion, its political structure, its financing. All of this is intricately tied into the present struggle for what we really would refer to as independence and Kujichagulia versus the continuing demand and desire from former colonizers and their Western allies to maintain their control on the African continent in order to continue to reap the benefits from its minerals, its resources, and its people. So that is going on all the time. There's big festivals taking place in Ghana this weekend, as a matter of fact. So every festival is actually a display of the cultural legacies that have not been destroyed by colonialism. And I view them as the ongoing effort to resurrect the traditions that existed and sustained Africa long before they ever met non African people. So these are taking place. Every community has its annual festival. This weekend is Cape Coast annual festival that had been, I think, discontinued for some time, but it's back and it's strong and it's taking place as we speak. So there are a lot of people that they visit Ghana and our people from the diaspora and they become disenchanted, but they don't realize that their own mental orientation, which is transparent to those of us that see them as they move around. They move around as if they want to become the new colonial masters of the local people. They don't recognize this attitude and behavior that they have, but they underestimate the creativeness, the savvy of local people. They end up losing money in deals that they thought they were slick. They end up missing opportunities because they don't ask anybody anything until things go bad. They underestimate the cost of living in Africa. If you go to the major city of Ghana, which is Accra, and you try to live there living large, you can't do that for longer than 2 or 3 months because the costs are too high and you're not prepared. So you leave Ghana, you're disgruntled, you put something on social media saying all these things happened to you. But the reality is, what happened to you is that you were ill prepared. You did very little research before you left. You thought you were going to be all that, and you got there and found out that the people are a little more clever than you think. They're not as backwards as you would like them to be, and you end up with your feelings hurt, you lost money, and you can't afford to live there, so you leave disgruntled. So these are some of the things that are happening on the ground. But the struggle to eliminate neo-colonial legacy is big in Africa. It's what stands out about this Sahel alliance of states. They are putting forth a major push to extricate themselves from the French neo-colonial influence, the pact for the continuation of colonization. They are trying to rid themselves of that. But of course, after 100 years of colonial influence on the continent, we can realize and appreciate the fact that it is not that easy to just extricate yourself from a situation where it has become so entangled with your everyday existence. It's like being in a, because I've done it, so it's like being in a marriage for 30 years and you decide that it's better to go your separate ways. It's more than a 5 minute decision in order to figure out how do we separate this entanglement and still be on good terms. We have children, we have cars, we have a house, we have debts, we have all these things. So it's not a 2 second decision and then it's all done with. It may take years to unravel things, but the Sahel states, Niger, Burkina Faso, Mali, Guinea, a number of others have toyed with the idea of joining. They are really trying to do everything within their power to return to a status of Kujichagulia, do what they feel is best for them, even if it's wrong. you feel better that you're making your own mistakes
Right.
as opposed to being forced to do things that don't work. You're not in control of it. You're frustrated by the demand that you have to do it. You're threatened if you decide not to do it. People are killed if they're determined to be independent. So this is all a big challenge. So, but
Hmm.
I'm heartened by the stance of Niger, Burkina Faso, Mali, and if
Yeah.
the West and the Europeans don't assassinate them, which they are attempting to do every single day, if they don't assassinate these leaders, they will show through their resilience and actually doing things that help their people that you can live and survive without the colonial arteries attached to you. So I'm praying every day that these brothers stay alive and they get allies on the continent, which would bring me, I could segue to the Ghana and the ECOWAS.
Hmm.
See, since the whole continent is under it's almost the whole continent in some ways under the control of the Western and European powers because of economics, because of politics, because of institutions like religion and education. So for all of these nations or nation states to align with the Sahel Alliance, it requires all of them to, in a way, challenge their existing control mechanisms from Europe and the West. So ECOWAS first made a statement that they were going to take military action against Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali after the coups. So they were going to, as Western Alliance of Economic States, they were going to take military action against these three coups. Their threat of military action actually prompted the three uh, states, Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali, to figure the best step for them to take would be to form an alliance so that they would support each other, to say that any attack on one of us is an attack on all of us. So it's the threat of the ECOWAS at the behest of the West and Europe that prompted these brothers to say, we will be stronger together than if we are single states. And so it's the threat of ECOWAS that said if you don't reinstall these presidents within their positions within a matter of 2 weeks, we're going to take military action and invade you. Well, the three coup states joined forces, said an attack on one of us is an attack on all of us. And ECOWAS backed off. That bluff was called, it didn't work. And so they have now tried to renegotiate to see if they can pull the Sahel alliance back into the ECOWAS. They have rejected that flat out, said that's never going to happen. So they can forget about that. So Senegal, whose new president was elected while he was in prison, he's now made overtures to the Sahel states to see if they might join the ECOWAS again. They have reiterated that they are not interested in being part of the ECOWAS. And so Senegal, I heard recently, has reduced the French troops in Senegal. So if these brothers, like we have so many of our people, like yourself, if if your message can gain some footing and people start listening, the listenership goes up because what is being said makes perfect sense. So much of the information that our people get and they follow, if it were analyzed, it doesn't make any sense at all, but it's just popular, but it's not logical. So the logical voices are oftentimes uh, quieted because they're criticized as being conspiracy theorists or whatever. But if you notice, what starts out as a conspiracy theory, 8 months later, it seems to be the fact if people are not distracted. So that's kind of the short and sweet version of the sentiments on the ground and some reflection on the Sahel alliance, which I'm very encouraged by, and I hope it strengthens and other nations join it.
Nana, I have to ask this question as you've outlaid all of these different alliances and bring up the issue of the BRICS alliance. And I'm just wondering, there seems to be a pushback on Western hegemony uh, uh, by virtue of the Federal Reserve and its role in the monetary system. Um, do you see any connection between Burkina Faso, Niger, Mali, these countries, and the BRICS, or are they outliers when it comes to the alliances that are existing right now to push against the globalist agenda of the United
Well,
States and the countries that are connected?
well, I haven't heard any specific declaration of the Sahel alliance becoming part of BRICS. So back to my comment about what Lynn Hamtonio said, there's a hidden agenda. So there's been no statement that I've heard, and I try to follow everything that I see. So, but I may have missed something. But there's very few things that come across the platforms that I don't notice because I'm spending time every day trying to become as informed as possible and know what to investigate. So I've heard nothing that says that the Sahel Alliance has made an application to become a BRICS member. However, the Sahel Alliance has engaged with Russia, as we know,
Mhm.
and have hired Russian mercenaries to help provide for their security in fighting insurgency. So to me, if I connect the dots, if the Sahel Alliance has hired and receiving military equipment from Russia, and Russia is a founding member of the BRICS with China, it means, in my mind, indirectly that the Sahel Alliance is close to the BRICS alliance at the same time, whether it's stated publicly or not. And they have done what is strategically sound. It may not have long term benefit, but it's strategically sound in the sense that if the Sahel Alliance is collaborating with and using Russian forces for their security, we all know on the call that that creates a hesitation on the part of the West to just outright attack this Sahel alliance because it may trigger involvement in military pushback from Russia and China. So they are strategically trying to position themselves to be able to move towards their own independence in state of Kujichagulia and aligning themselves with those forces that they think could help them locally and globally. So I think it's no mystery that the BRICS alliance is designed to do away with the American hegemony of unipolar dominance. As we were growing up as young men, we understood on whatever level we could understand it that the main powers in the world were the United States and the Soviet Union. Well, once the Soviet Union collapsed, it left the US as the total master of the globe because there was no adversary of equal force because the Soviet Union was dissolved. So the behavior of the US in its position of master of the universe, it has done things that have made other nations question whether it's logical and sensible to be under the dominance of the US, given its temperament given its way of dealing with other people. And to a certain extent, we don't have time to go into it on the program right now. To a certain extent, the Western attitude is what has created and facilitated the organization of BRICS. So that's a conversation for another day, but it's our behavior in the US that has made other nations very fearful of their position if they allow the US to be the global power all by itself. So it's prompted other nations, particularly Russia and China, India, South Africa, and Russia. I mentioned Russia, to join forces to see if they could somehow offset this unipolar dominance. So BRICS is the counterbalance to American hegemony. And they know that the US currency is all fiat currency. So nothing supports the dollar other than the agreement to use it. So these other countries feel that they own and have a lot of their own gold deposits in the US, and they hold a lot of US dollars that have all been tied to the petrodollar up until now. So the US agreed with Saudi Arabia, I think in the 60s or early 70s, 70s, to tie all oil purchases around the world to the US dollar, which meant that any country that needs oil, and if you're not an oil producing country, you need oil. And if you don't produce much oil and your economy grows, you need more oil. So the US was strategically clever to get Saudi Arabia to agree to accept payment for oil only in US dollars. So what did that mean? That meant that every nation around the world that needs to buy oil needs to have US dollars. So the US economy is always booming by appearances because all the nations around the world are stockpiling dollars in order to buy oil from Saudi Arabia. Well, that plan started to crack when the US wanted Saudi Arabia to pump more oil, and the Saudi Arabians said they wouldn't pump more oil. So part of their deal was the United States, Saudi Arabia would take US dollars only for oil purchases. And in exchange, the US would give Saudi Arabia military protection. Well, when the Saudi Arabia declined to pump more oil, the US said that they would have to rethink whether they would provide military protection. Well, when that happened, it sent a message to the rest of the world that the US may renege on its promises if your behavior doesn't comply with their demands. And that behavior sent a clarion call out to the world that we need to rethink the relationship with the US because they're demonstrating that they may not be willing to continue and meet their obligations according to our original agreements. And so, ironically, the behavior of the master has actually triggered the responding behavior of the rest of the world to say, you know, we better start rethinking. We may be better off if we came together and started our own network as opposed to relying on someone that even with their best buddy, they said they would have to rethink what they said they were going to do. It would be like the three of us on the show waking up next week and finding out that we're not friends like we think we are. So that reshapes our whole relationship and what we tell other people about each other. He said, well, you know, Nana ain't exactly what you think he is, or Lynn is not the guy you think he is, or Yao Vince is not what he thinks he is. So now you have the whole world questioning you. And just think if we had power to do all these things. So as soon as our allies lose total confidence or the confidence is shaken, people start thinking of other ways to protect themselves. And that's what BRICS has started out to be. So from 5 nations, now I think there's like 25 nations that are part of BRICS. And the BRICS partners have over 50% of the world's population. They have 50 to 60% of the world's resources in their countries. So they are poised and getting themselves ready to be able to chart their own destiny without the U.S. being a consideration of theirs. And that's the scary part for the U.S. and Western powers.
Right.
Because you need people, you need the resources, and if you can't get the resources, you can't function.
Yeah. Well, I have to mention that China is now buying petroleum from Saudi Arabia, and they're not using U.S. dollars; they're using their own currency.
Right.
There are 5 nations, I think, that were added to the BRICS sometime within the past year, and I think there are like 22 or more that are interested in joining. But I just think it's interesting that you have de-dollarization taking place right now, and as you pointed out, there are countries that are not interested in using the U.S. dollar anymore, which means that the U.S. loses its stronghold on the global financial system through the U.S. dollar and the Federal Reserve System. So we're seeing kind of a reconfiguration of the world's economic system, and we are looking at train wrecks while these things are happening in the background, and we're unaware of the implications that they will have on our lives and really the functioning of the world. The globalist agenda vis-a-vis the World Economic Forum it's in full effect. And the election that's taking place in this country is part of that whole scenario. So I know you have some questions, and I know Lynn has some
Yeah.
things that he
And
wants
here's
to
the
bring
thing.
up. But I just wanted to put that in there so that people realize that we need to be paying attention to what's happening
Right.
right now.
Right.
And I think that is equally important. I'm sure Nana can concur with this. Is that when you have a situation, just look at the past. This is why history is so important. When you look at the situation that is taking place, our listeners need to know, and that's why I blow the horn all the time about paying attention and being involved in insignificant things, because history shows that anytime that America became has become threatened about their dollar, things happen globally. Things happen to people individually. So the question is, and we know that America is not going to sit back on his loins and just let this thing happen. So when we see, that's why, when we see things going on around the planet, we have to look at it differently, and because a lot of times we think a lot of the things that the conflicts that occur around the globe is just people just upset with each other, this, that, and other. We tend not to look at it as being orchestrated by some other hidden agenda like what we're talking about. So we have to keep our mind's eye on what ripple effect is that going to play on America, and what America is willing to do. Just like when we talk about the Sahel countries, you see how they're going in and try to break up that little harmonious agreement with them. So what is America going to do now to deal with this possibly groundswell of this of the BRICS situation? Because these people are just tired of America going around weaponizing the dollar. And if you don't do what I say, this is what we're going to do. So the question and the statement that, maybe now that we can deal with is that, would you think, or do you believe, because there's been a lot of talk and pushback from a lot of leaders in Africa that seems to be standing up and saying, hey, you guys ain't gonna tell us what to do no more. So you think because of that alliances that they may have with Russia, India, and China, that this is where they're getting this voice from?
Uh, I don't. Well, of course, anything could be true. So, but my sense of being on the ground and observing and what's going on in Kenya, what's going on in Nigeria. See, African continent, unlike the U.S., they have 1.4 billion people, and the average age on the continent is about 25. So it's the young people, just like the young people on the college campuses here. It's the young people that are creating all of the difficulty for the U.S. government around Israel and Palestine. It's the young people. So young people have put two and two together. They don't get much out of their own governments, and so they feel like they have nothing to lose because they don't have anything, and they can see a lot of their political leaders riding around in fancy SUVs, corrupting and stealing money, but yet the people don't have anything. The youth are unemployed, there's no opportunity, so they have nothing to lose. So they take to the streets and they begin to realize, just like we did in the 60s, just like the march, uh, the, the Million Man March.
Mhm.
You get fed up with something, and you get tired of being tired, as Fannie Lou Hamer would say, and you get together and realize that you have the power in all the people that you see standing with you. So they begin to flex their muscles. And the reality becomes that the organized government cannot control a population that is in disagreement with it. There's just too many people. And if they don't care, and the whole political structure relies upon the fact that the people are going to just do what they're told. And as long as the people do what they're told, everything seems to run smoothly. It doesn't
Mhm.
accomplish what you want. You
Mhm.
complain in the barber shop or the beauty shop or wherever, but the things don't get better. But once the young people start taking to the street and say, we don't care, we have nothing to lose, life is not worth living. So kill me if you want to kill me right here and right now. But we'll burn down Parliament. We'll stop the people from doing things. We'll attack the embassies. And the people begin to come into some awareness that somehow there's some power that they actually do have. It's unmanaged, it's not orchestrated, but it becomes a realization that it is there somehow.
Mm.
Okay, I don't know what happened with this signal. It just kind of dipped out on
Yeah.
us. Maybe it will come back soon. But I do think that it is important for us to talk
Mhm.
about what's going on with the BRICS, talk about this globalist agenda that's in effect right now. I think Nana points out something really interesting when he talks about the average age of folks on the continent and all those respective countries, and the comparison to what happened here in America is a very legitimate it's a very legitimate issue. And as I'm thinking about it, young
Always the
people are
young.
in a
Always the
very
young.
different
Always the
place
young.
right
Mhm.
different place right now,
Mhm.
because it all comes down to money. And right now, with the current situation, young people can't afford to buy homes. But then you have the baby boomers and others who have had the benefit of having access to resources outside of the inflationary climate that we live in right now, and they've been able to acquire things. So they have things that are important to them that they want to hold on to. So if they express any kind of dissentiment about what's going on in the world today, they're in jeopardy of losing those things. Whereas on the other hand, young folks, they don't have the same situation. They don't have the same access to those things. So they don't have anything to lose. I think that's that point that needs to be made. I think the other thing is that when you look at what's going on in the continent and when you look at what's going on here, you have people who are really kind of seeing through the indoctrination and the propaganda that exists, and they're saying, well, we don't want to fall for this, because they're thinking individuals. Here in America, they're talking about banning TikTok. And I think one of the reasons that they want to ban TikTok is because these young people are getting on this platform and they're telling you what's going on. And not only are they telling you what's going on, but they're giving you information that leads to solutions, things that you can do as individuals to push back on the situations that we're facing right now. So, the war, we talk about World War III, and people talk about what's going on in Palestine and other parts of the world with respect to war. But I think World War III is already in progress. And this war is a war that's taking place in the minds of people. It's the war over our headspace that's in effect. And we have to push back against the controls that they are looking to exert upon us and what we think, and what we do as a result of what we think. So they want us to be distracted by sports and movies and television and all those other kinds of things, so that we don't do the things that we need to do to take action to push back against the controls that they want to impose on us. And I'll turn the platform back over to Nana as he has rejoined us.
My apologies. I got a call, and I guess the calls, like they do in Ghana, they bump you off of what
Okay.
you
Yeah.
may be doing. So
Mhm.
my apologies.
Okay.
But, so you might have picked up. Let me go back to something I wanted to mention, because it relates to Hamtonio, and relates to all of us, but it relates to Hamtonio's recent decision. One of the things that you get as a view from outside of America, like when I'm in Ghana, you have the opportunity to look at America and the systemic white racism and supremacy. You get to look at that without the emotional attachment and stress of dealing with it every single day. So you can see the dynamics and can get a better look at what you would need to do. But while you're in the system, and until you retire, you don't realize that much of your, and I gotta say to Antonio, one of the things you realize that is most exciting to you about your retirement is the realization that you are now extricated from the daily demand of dealing with directly the racism and supremacy that you have to deal with, and you have to make compromises every day
Mhm.
in aspects of who you are, what you believe, how you would like to function. You every day, in order to be on the what we call the plantation, and in order to be on the plantation, you have to consciously suppress aspects of your personality or
Mhm.
your belief system or
Mhm.
your desires to function in the world. And so when you retire, the excitement we have about retirement is I am no longer required now on a day to day basis to compartmentalize my feelings or to channel my emotions or to determine how best to respond to a simple question or how much of myself can I actually reveal. And so I say that's why I sent you the message that said, now that you retire from that, now you can get
Mhm.
busy on your post retirement work.
Mhm.
Because if you think about it by comparison, as we work under this structure, we're constantly under the yoke of structures that we don't like. So why are we so excited about retirement when we get to retirement age? And at the same time, Bill Gates is not retiring. Warren Buffett is not retiring. Klaus Schwab is not retiring because they're doing what they want to do all the time.
Mhm.
They're not subject to any constraints.
Mhm.
Bill Gates says we have to focus on global depopulation. We don't even notice that what he's saying in that statement is we have to kill people.
Mm-hmm.
What else does depopulation mean? And if we are good with vaccines and other
Yeah.
things, we could get the population down. He's admitting to the world that he wants to kill people, but he's not retiring. He's not tired of doing what he's doing because he's not dealing with the racism and white supremacy that we have to deal with every day. So he doesn't have to compromise. Klaus Schwab doesn't have to hold his tongue because they can say what they want to say. They're doing what they want to do. So some of the questions we have to ask is we have to ask and we have to connect the dots. And Vince, you're describing it right. Most of what the information we get is for purposes of distracting us from analyzing the very obvious breadcrumbs that are all around us.
That's right.
But if we're just focused on the debate between whether LeBron is better than Michael Jordan and whether men, transgender men can participate in swimming, we can't see the breadcrumbs that are right under our feet that are telling us that Bill Gates has made the announcement that he wants to kill 2 billion people because there's too many people on the earth. Then if we just follow Bill Gates, why is he buying up all the farmland in the United States? If we just follow that, why does the food have all GMOs in the food? Why is Bill Gates creating genetically modified mosquitoes that will carry malaria? Why is he getting, why do they give in Ghana, for example, why do they give farmers all cell phones? Here you just have a cell phone. And the cell phone tracks where they go and where they farm. And then the farm growers, the large corporation, the multinationals, give them seeds that they convince them that will give them more abundant crops. And they don't have to pay for the seeds. So a farmer that is trying to grow crops has a cell phone. He thinks he's communicating with people. He doesn't know he's being tracked. That's the hidden agenda. He doesn't know he's being tracked. So they know where everything is being grown because they're tracking the farmer that has the cell phone. So after the season, you get these seeds that you don't have to pay for, and they will give you a more robust crop. What farmer wouldn't want that? So you plant the seeds, you get the crop, but the seeds can't be reproduced. So now you're producing watermelon that has no seeds, or you produce oranges that have no seeds. Now you have to go get those seeds in order to have a crop. And these seeds are cannibalistic. So once they're in the ground, the roots are reaching out to destroy other naturally growing things. So all of this is going on all the time, but we're focused on the wrong things. So we don't even see these things. And there's court cases. I'm involved in fighting a court case in Ghana where they have a plant breeders bill. The United Nations, the World Health Organization are all behind these things. So you can see how these arteries all connect. So they're right in plain sight. But if your attention is on what we're going to do for Thanksgiving and what we're going to do at the club on Friday night and how I'm going to get my nails done and what kind of chain I'm going to buy, what kind of wheels I'm going to put on my car. Well, all these things that are readily available to you, you just don't see them. And you're told that everything else that you hear about is a conspiracy theory. So you're right. We're being distracted from things that are so easy to understand. And the people that we talk to, if all the information you get from CNN, you are totally misinformed and uninformed.
Mm-hmm. And that like I said, that sounds like the normal game that has been played, and
That's a
we know it goes all the way back even further, Rome or whatever. Give them bread and circumstance, keep them entertained and their bellies filled. and you can forget about it at that particular point.
What do we? What's
Mm.
our common phrase? If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, right. And see,
Right.
here's the thing, and it kind of off topic a little bit, but it's talking about our awareness, and this is just another example of our lack of awareness. You know, prostate cancer, dementia, which they call in diabetes, type 3,
3.
and all that stuff. And these particular ailments in children is rapid, running rampant. And we, just going along like it's some type of normalcy. We have moved that tragedy into normalcy, like it's okay. What I
Yeah,
mean? Like, well, yeah, this is the way how the thing how the ball bounces. Well, and and we should be claiming bloody murder. So, is there a relationship? The point is too: is there a relationship to what you just said about our growing methods? And as far as the seeds, plants, foods, and things of that nature, those breadcrumbs is right there, and we're not even connecting the
no,
dots.
Yeah.
but
W-
I've come to appreciate and consider the possibility that, which I was mentioning from seeing the U.S. from outside, it's on a certain level, it's so emotionally and physically intensive just to be in America that it takes energy, and it's a luxury in a sense to connect all these dots. Because if your daily existence is dealing with the stress of racism and white supremacy from the time you wake up to the time you go to sleep, you don't really have the mental energy or the time to think about other things. You're too worn out by dealing with the life games of just making it back to the house. So outside, when you don't have that stress, you can look at it and say, "Well, let me think about this," because nothing is impressing itself on you at the moment. So you have a kind of a luxury to do things that you don't have that luxury if you're in US dealing with it every single day. And I can appreciate that there's some qualitative difference with how your time is spent and the toll it's taking on you. So you have migraine headaches, you have different anxieties, everything. So I'm talking about something that you have to have the luxury to look at social media and say, "Oh, I heard this about Burkina Faso. Let me go double check that." Well, if you're dealing with the stress of racism and white supremacy every single minute of your waking hours, you don't have time to do that.
Mhm,
It's just too demanding. Say,
mhm,
well, don't tell me. I got enough problems already. Don't tell me about the food. Don't tell me about this. Don't tell me about obesity. I'm just barely able to make it from the morning till night. What do you expect me to do with all this?
mhm,
Well, how am I going to do something different? I'm not going to have any more resources. I'm not going to have this. So why are you telling me this stuff? What can I do?
mhm,
So I've,
yes.
I've come to appreciate that there's a certain reality that the mental strain and the mental illness that we suffer by dealing with this unrelenting pressure has to be taken into consideration somehow.
Yes.
People can
Yes.
only
Not
do what they can do.
that's why I was saying that the war is a war that's taking place in our minds, and I'm reminded of what Henry Kissinger said. He said, "If you want to control a nation, you control the food," and that's exactly what Bill Gates is affecting right now. We are about to conclude the radio broadcast, and we will be migrating over to Facebook and YouTube exclusively. So I just wanted to remind our listeners that you can visit us on YouTube. You can go to my channel, which is Vince Robinson. You can also go to the Journey with Hamtonio, and you can like and subscribe to those channels, and you'll get notifications of when we do our broadcasts. And the beauty of what we're doing right now also is that if you missed the radio show, if you missed listening to it in your car or wherever you might listen to the radio, you can catch a rebroadcast of what we're doing so that you don't miss out on the information that we share with you on these respective platforms. Also, I just want to take a moment to remind you about the event that takes place at Larchmere Arts tomorrow evening. That is spoken word and music with Plan B. It's going to be a phenomenal show. I can feel it in my bones. Looking forward to performing with Plan B. So again, don't forget, like, comment, and subscribe to our channels and propel this broadcast to the next level. Also want to take the time to acknowledge our engineer, Tone Harley. He does it for us every week, and we are so appreciative for what he does to bring this vital program to you, because without him, without WERE, we would not be able to do this on the radio. So big ups to my man Hamptonio, free man right now, stepped off the plantation and ready to step into the world of reality without the constraint of somebody saying, "Oh, you can't say that, brother." You know,
Right.
we can relieve you of your job. Thankfully, you are still with us. As always, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself, make today your best day. Peace.
Peace, peace.
Are we? Should I log off?
No, no.
No, stay
Okay.
on. Stay on, because now we are on YouTube and Facebook exclusively, and folks can view us on 360 Info Network, the Facebook page. You can also go to my Facebook page and catch the broadcast. So we're in a lot of different places. So you don't have any excuses for not being able to check out this program. So Nana, let's get back to the conversation and the questions that you have for the presidential candidates. If we can pivot to that, because there's just so much in those questions. And we had Congresswoman Shontel Brown on a few months ago, because we were kind of dealing with the whole Project 2025 situation and other things. And I had an opportunity to question one of her staff people about cryptocurrency. And I wanted to ask the Congresswoman about cryptocurrency, because it's a very relevant topic right now in our election. And it was the response that I got was she is aware there are nuances, and it would really be an hour-long conversation if we dealt with that. But that's one of the questions. But I just wanted to give you an opportunity to raise those issues so that our listeners and our viewers can be informed about what the real issues are in this election, and not so much the idea that we have a choice between evil and eviler, because it always comes down to the lesser of two evils. We have two parties that are the left wing and the right wing of the same bird, and the same issues that we face from day to day. And I will continue to say this: there's nothing magical about November 6th, and there's nothing magical about January 1st, because the problems that were problems the day before will be the problems that are the problems the day after. And there's no magic bullet, there's no magic solution, and there's really nothing that the U.S. government can do right now to stem the rising tide of inflation and the impact that it's having on us as people who live in this country, and others who are facing the same circumstances in other countries around the world.
Shay, the reason I tried to put together some points is kind of what we're talking about. There's instead of connecting the dots, we're dissuaded and directed towards relatively meaningless decisions. Like right now in the presidential election, you stated, I was just want to reiterate it and state it in a little bit different way. The thing that the populace is being directed to is to focus on which one of the candidates is black enough and which one is the most criminal and which is worse. That's the decision that's they would like people to make. If Kamala's not black enough, should she be president? If Trump is too much of a criminal, should he be president? and which one would be worse for the people, our people, depending on which one is president. But those aren't really the questions that need to be asked. So I put together a list of what I thought were some pertinent questions that a voting person making a decision about a candidate, no matter which candidate you want to vote for, you still have certain questions that become important because it comes down to, if you were president, what would you do about the following? What is your plan in reference to certain things? Just to be president, do nothing is irrelevant. So we really want to know ultimately what are your thoughts about certain things. So I just listed 10. I sent them to you so I wouldn't have to look on paper. But I
Mhm.
think the first one had to do with all this talk about 20 Project 2025. We should be asking these two people and any other person running for any office, uh, what's your give me three or four elements out of Project 2025, and you tell me what they represent and what are the pros and cons. That's what I need to find out from you. Because if you're going to be the person in a position to do something about it, I need to know what you think about it and what you're going to do and how it's going to be beneficial or it's going to be counterproductive. Uh, the other thing that is talked about a lot, but it's not talked about in any specific detail, but the reports I've heard, there's been about 20 million people, that undocumented immigrants that have come through the Texas border. And there's reports that everybody is familiar with about the allegation that these 20 million undocumented people are living in sanctuary cities. They're living off of money that's been provided to them. They have food cards, they have bank accounts, and they have things. So the question from any person that's going to be in politics and just any person on the street, what does all this mean to us? 20 million people is almost 10% of the US population. So what are these people doing? And what are you going to say and do about them vis-a-vis all the rest of the people, particularly in sanctuary cities where you have populations of our people, Black people, African American people, ex descendants of slaves that could use the same benefits that seem to be available to these people that have just arrived. So what's up with that? We have to know the answers to these. So I see you have the thing posted. And what's the position of the political leader that may be in a position to do something about it? What is your position about digital bank currency? Because those of us in the general population are told that digital bank currency is potentially very invasive. Everything you do with money could be tracked. Your use of money could be curtailed for little or no reason. Uh, you may have money or you may not have money. You may be allowed to spend a certain amount of money. You may be penalized for your behavior that then prevents you from using your money. We need to know what is your position as a prospective potential leader on this thing. We also need to know from people because it's a push and it's a drive and it's a campaign that's global. Is what is your position on LGBTQ agenda, especially as it relates to schools, especially as it relates to young people, especially as it relates to um, uh, puberty blockers without parental permission, surgeries without parental permission. We've always had an understanding in the US about the fact that there are certain parental rights that are unalienable, they're inalienable. But now we see moves underway that is putting the government in a position to make decisions and allow your child to make a decision that doesn't require your approval. That's a significant departure from what we know to be standard practice for centuries. So what is your position on this? Because this same agenda is being pushed in African nations. And if you follow social media, you see the pushback that's come from that. You see the threats that have come from governments that if they don't permit this, the West and the US will take positions against them. So this is a serious thing that people need to know the position of their so-called political leaders on these things. The other thing I have on here is it's no mystery that there's a war going on between Russia and Ukraine in Ukraine. There's no mystery that there's a war. I don't even call it a war in Israel and Palestine. This is more like a massacre. It's not really a war that's going on that involves the U.S. in both of these campaigns. So if there's someone running for the highest office in the land, or a senator or a congressperson, whether state, federal, or local, we need to understand what is your position going forward about these campaigns. These campaigns are very costly. They're using American resources. They're using American military. So how long will this go on? Afghanistan went much longer than anticipated. So if the government is for the people, by the people, and of the people have a right to know these things. But if you ask yourself, if if you're living in a place where the government is of the people, by the people, and for the people, you'll have to question whether those are realities. These questions help you get to that. Number six I had was, what's your position on big pharma as it relates to the COVID pandemic that we've just come through? No matter how you feel about it, if you followed any of the reports, investigations, autopsies, and lawsuits and settlements, you would be naive to think that the big pharma has not enriched themselves tremendously. And there's a certain level of mistrust and fraud that has gone on in relation to this pandemic.
Mhm.
So, what is an elected person going to do to hold people accountable? If you say no one's above the law, certainly these corporations, because they function as humans. So if no one's above the law, these pharmaceutical companies cannot be above the law. At least that's what we say.
Mhm.
We say that we have to prove that that's true. Number seven, I said we need to find out what is the position of an elected official as it relates to the proliferation of all the genetically modified foods that people are consuming, the government is approving for consumption. We need to understand that because the incidence of cancers in young people in Zimbabwe, for example, I just heard yesterday that it's the leading country in the world for cancer, ovarian cancer for women.
Wow.
They've traced it specifically to their food.
Mm.
So
Wow.
in Ghana, the incidence of children with cancer is increasing in ways that I never thought I would hear of. So the incidence and the frequencies of cancers around the world are growing. Why is that? We used to think that it would take a long time before cancer would mature in your body in order to give you trouble. But for have all these children with cancer, you know that there's something that's accelerating this
Yes.
development of cancer. And if
Yes.
we think it's accidental or it's all just coincidental,
Mm.
we have to be less than naive.
Mm.
Something must be contributing to this, and if it isn't, fine, but we need to find out. Our elected officials need to be focused on these things, and all of these things that relate to health. I think an intelligent person has to consider some link between the admission of Bill Gates that if we're successful with vaccines and other things, we could depopulate the planet by 2 billion people. I don't think it's unreasonable to think that those two things are somehow related.
Mhm.
We also need to know if we're following it, we're not living under a total rock. We know the World Health Organization has been working for the past 24 months at least to try to get every nation in the world to sign off on a World Health Organization treaty that would authorize the World Health Organization or its leadership to determine when there was a global emergency and what every nation that is a member of the treaty would be required to do, which means that the World Health Organization on its own could declare an emergency and stop the use of airlines, call for home sequestration, cancel employment, cancel visas, cancel travel, cancel bank accounts, cancel movement, and determine that the whole world needs to take vaccine ABC-7, whatever that is. And nations and groups have been pushing back on this proposal for a couple of years. There have been petitions that have gone around to get support to object to these things. They've had groups that go to Davos and challenge these things. So far, there are many nations that have serious concerns about this and whether it's a wise thing to do. So, an elected official needs to tell us, the populace, what are their positions as it relates to the World Health Organization becoming the health manager for the world and being able to tell the world what to do because there's an outbreak of something someplace. So therefore, everybody in the world has to do A, B, C, D, etc. So that to me is a serious problem. Then the World Economic Forum is Klaus Schwab is not making any, uh, 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 not taking any caution to hide the fact that they want to reorganize the world into 15-minute cities so that everything you need is within 15 minutes and you don't have to go anywhere. His favorite slogan is you'll own nothing, have nothing, and be happy. So think about what that means. You own nothing, you have nothing, and you'll be happy. You'll be in a 15-minute city. And as they pilot some of these 15-minute cities, people are finding out that you can't just leave this 15-minute city either. So there's things that are behind the scenes that don't match the colorful picture that's on the front. We need to know what an elected person thinks about these things because they're a part of what is on the horizon, at least from what people are saying. And finally, my number 10 thing is what is the position of an elected official in going after Dr. Fauci and company, who the information seems to suggest that this pandemic was created as a result of the gain of function research that Fauci approved against Obama's mandate to abstain from gain of function research. It appears from the data and the information that I've looked at and heard people talk about that Dr. Fauci went around that mandate, approved the gain of function research at the Wuhan laboratory through some backdoor, behind the scenes relationships. And it's out of that laboratory that this virus escaped or was released. It wasn't a bat at the marketplace like they've talked about, because they've never found the bat. They've never found any human that the bat bit. They've never found any dynamic that would have allowed that to go from an animal to a human, which would have been required.
We're going to
So,
qualify and say allegedly.
allegedly,
Allegedly.
allegedly. So, my thing is that these are the kind of things, because these are existential threats to life. Whether LeBron is better than Michael Jordan or vice versa is not an existential threat to life. But GMO in our foods may be an existential threat. So we need to know from our elected officials, are you aware of, at least the first thing, are you even aware of these things? If you're not aware of these things, how can you serve in our best interest? If you're aware of them, what do you plan to do? What is your position? Because you're supposed to be representing our interests as an elected official. The biggest coup that has taken place in the world is not in Niger, Burkina Faso, or Mali. The biggest coup is the coup that's taken place in governments where the elected officials have taken on the responsibility that they're working in their interests. They no longer work for the people. The people just are led to believe that is happening. But if you challenge them, you realize they're not even working in your interest. They can't answer your questions. They're not working on the things that you're concerned about. They don't seem to even know about them. The ones they do know about them, they call them conspiracy theories. But they're elected by us in order to represent us. So they have decided that they're representing themselves. And what they do is, it's okay, because we have given them the authority to do what they want to do. That's what they think. We've given them authority to work in our interests. And just like I'm giving you a field report, they don't want to give us a field report. What have you done in our interest? What are you doing that's in our interest? And if you're doing something that's in our interest, why don't we notice it?
You think you ignorant and you think
Yeah,
you're
why
intelligent.
don't we notice that these good things are not making us feel good?
Mhm.
You say the economy is going well. If that's the case, why don't we notice that? Are we that naive? Are we that dumb? Are we comatose? You say the economy is better, but why is it when I go to the grocery store, it costs more? Why doesn't it seem like that translates to real life? You're just saying that. So, but there's lots of other questions that we should ask, but those are some I put out there just to get people to think about. Look, there's more going on than just whether Kamala Harris is black or whether Donald Trump is a criminal. The question becomes, if why would 330 something million people, why is Donald Trump even a consideration as a candidate for office? We got 330 million people. I mean, there's nobody else that is qualified, is good. So these distractions are just that. They're distractions, but we're not thinking. So if we're going to vote, at least think about what you're doing. It's not who's worse. Sometimes the worst and the second worst is basically the same thing. So
Mhm.
why should that be our consideration? Which one is worse?
Mhm.
So that's my update on
Mhm.
that.
Yeah, Nana, it's really the illusion of choice.
Right.
We think that choosing between one or the other is going to make a difference. I'm just thinking about the fact that you had this presidential candidate, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and he was saying all the things that the third party would want to say because they were all relevant issues. And then within the past couple of weeks, he would abandon his campaign and then switch his allegiance over to Cult 45. you know well, if you look at that situation with a critical eye, you will see that the purpose of his candidacy appears to have been to siphon off votes that would have gone to the Democrat Party and its candidate to strengthen the position of the opposing candidate. So it's the illusion of choice, because those Congress people who are supposed to be representing our interests are actually representing the interests of the people who pay for them to get elected into office and to preserve their ability to enforce their agenda. That's what it looks like to me. I
Mm.
don't know. I wonder what your thoughts are about that.
Well, one thing that we know from science, if we look at science with impassion and we try to be mature about it, as John Henry Clark or any of our illustrious ancestors would tell us, that the question is, what is the truth? That's really what we want. What is the truth? So the truth is that Chancellor Williams put it in one of his books. He said, we talk about democracy, but there's no such thing. There's no democracy. There's no democracy anywhere. Anywhere we find that we say there's a democracy, the first thing we realize is that the candidates that we vote on, we don't even establish them as candidates. They are candidates that are presented to us to vote on. So democracy, you would have a participation in the candidates. So once the money determines who's likely to be the candidate, then you know that the people with the money are setting up the election. And the people with the money are promoting the candidates. And if we make our decisions based on the ads, then whichever ads were most attractive to us are the ones that are helping us to decide what we think we're deciding independently. So we're not deciding anything independently. In psychology, we call it a forced choice. It was illustrated very well in Denzel's Washington Training Day. In the scene he was in with Snoop Dogg was the drug dealer, and Denzel told him, "You want to go home or you want to go to jail? You want to go home or you want to go to jail?" Well, nobody's going to select going to jail if the other choice is going home. So of course you're going to say you want to go home, because the way the choices are presented, it forces you to select the thing I wanted you to select in the first place. So we're given forced choices that we think are our independent reasoned decisions, but they're not. We're being lured into a category where once we get into the party, we say, well, you're in the party now, so these are the things you got to do. Once you get in the club, you got to get 2 drinks. Well, what if I don't drink? Well, you're in the club. So you got in the club. Now you're in the club. So you got to get 2 drinks. You got to buy 2 drinks. So we're in the parties. The party, once you're in the party, you have to do what the party is saying you have to do. And it doesn't make any difference whether it's logical or not, because you're in the party. If you're in the party and you're going to talk differently, then they say, well, you should get out of the party. So you don't want to get out of the party, because where are you going to go then? You're going to be by yourself. Sometimes it's better to be by yourself and thinking, because you can find out what is actually going on. You're not obligated to compromise your ability to reason simply because you're in the party.
Yes.
Like
I
being
want
on.
to illustrate what you just said about forced choice, because I think it's really relevant, and I really don't think that people are thinking through this whole process. We have a candidate that was not chosen by the people through the normal process, the primary process. And we can talk about the things that happened that led up to her being chosen as the candidate. But the bottom line is that the people who are members of this party, I'm talking about the grassroots voters, they didn't have an opportunity to say, well, this is who we want. We were told this is who is going to be our candidate. So where is democracy in that process? When I look at the primary process, by the time the primaries came to Ohio, we didn't have a choice. The people in Iowa had a choice of candidates. The people in South Carolina may have had a choice of candidates, but we didn't have it. So how is this a democracy where everybody has a say in who we choose to be our president? And this is no disrespect to Vice President Kamala Harris, but it's like the government speaks out of two sides of a mouth, and they're telling us that democracy is at stake. This is one of the choices that we have. We have an opportunity to choose between a dictatorship and a democracy. But the model that they are pushing forward does not illustrate democracy. But then we're cleaving to, well, we got to elect this person, because if we don't, then democracy is gone.
But it seems like it always been that way. It always been that way. You can, I equate that, to my job. You know, hey, crime is running rapid. Okay, so what we're going to do to circumvent crime or to help with crime, we're going to put in security cameras in the neighborhood. So it's all, that's the choice. Hey, it's a double-edged sword. So we're gonna think and feel that, hey, that's gonna help with crime, and that's just another. But we don't see the other side of it. Now I can spy and see what's going on in the neighborhood. You know what I mean? So like they did those kids in, I think it was Detroit or Chicago, one of them, where they was the schools was giving free laptops, but they found out that they were spying on the kids as well. So they always throw these double ends. We could go with what we talked about with the Monsanto seeds. Under harsh conditions, hey, your fruit was still bare, but at the same time, look what you're sacrificing in dealing with and buying the seeds. So this is something that they always oppose and throw at us, and most of the people fall for it. But I want to make one quick note about, and I think it's important as it relates to my former job as well, that regardless on who and whoever you select as president, things that affect us, the justice system has always affected Black folks in a different way. We got a different relationship with the criminal justice system like nobody else. Okay, and so what I just heard yesterday about the FOP endorsing Trump, you know. And I just want to reflect and just make people, my thing is, like I say, we America's gonna do what it do. Like I say, you got, a choice between a fast road to hell or a slow road to hell. I understand that. And personally, I take the slow road to hell, if I'm gonna be here for right now. So I still have to make a decisions that's going to give me some time and it's going to be in the best interest for me at the present. So for those who maybe may not know about this FOP situation, is that look at how the criminal justice system since the coming of Trump have treated the people. He has went around and enticed police officers to deal with it. Hey, if you got to do this to them while you arrested them, do this and do that. The FOP, far as I'm concerned, have always been conservative. When I would go into the districts, they would always be watching Fox News. So I'm just telling you the mindset of most of the police department. They always voted Republican, and the general attitude for those particular people is always felt like, and there's always been a Republican regime that the people are weighing down the system, cut them off. That's always how they felt. If you notice, always during the Republican regime, grant money dried up, the rich got richer, and things of that nature. That's always been the status quo. So with this FOP, for our activists who may be thinking of going with Colt 45s, as you say, Brother Vince, you think you got Karens now. You think you get hit over the head now and being abused by police on the street. Let 45 get back into play, and you see what's going to happen. I'm telling you, what's going to happen is it's not definitely gonna work out for you as far as black folks are concerned and minorities in our best interest. So that's a footnote that I definitely wanted to put out there and let people be aware of in their decision making.
Yeah, well, one of the promises that he is making is to provide greater immunity for
Yes,
police from
yes, yes,
prosecution. So
yes,
it's
yes.
basically
Come
giving
on, man.
them
Come on.
a license
What's
to
that telling you? What's
yeah,
that saying to you? You're gonna be beating your head, brother.
right. Giving them a license to unalive. But then again, when you look at the history of this country, very few police officers are prosecuted for taking lives, whether they be black lives, white lives, green lives, whatever. I mean, that paradigm also continues to exist. And then when we look at the Heritage Foundation and the plans that they have, these are things that are being executed as we speak. They're not waiting until next year to put these things into effect. Nana and I had a conversation yesterday about the state of education in our state. And there have been Senate bills and House bills that have been passed to basically strengthen the Republican Party's ability to capitalize on education and to remove advocacy for students from that formula so that people can profit from education. But the students, the ones that we always say, it's all about the student, it's all about the student, it's all about the future, our children, and so forth and so on. But the education system exists to prop up companies that can profit from the process, and the student is they're sitting at the bottom of this equation. And it's really ironic that we even speak of this right now, because the city of Cleveland is in a position where they have to pass a levy right now. There's going to be a ballot initiative. There's going to be a levy in November to continue or actually to increase the tax on residents. And this is kind of problematic too, because you have so many residents in our city who no longer have children in the school system, and they're on fixed incomes. And then you come to them year after year and you say to them, we want more, but they don't have a vested interest in that system. And we've known historically for years that this part of the system is broken. And year after year, they ignore it and they don't address it. They just come back every 4 years or every 8 years or however often they do and say, okay, voters, we need you to reach a little bit deeper. Uh, Donna, this might be a perfect opportunity for you to talk about Wings Academy, its significance, and why people should consider enrolling their students, their children in the school.
Well, it's let me comment on something that you're saying. You're making profound statements that may not seem as profound to the ear of the listener, because we tend to let things go past us at times. But we have to really focus on the use of terminology, which we don't, unfortunately, enough. We don't focus on the terminology enough. There's a term that we use that you just referenced, that this part of the system is broken. I think that's become a common phrase, but like many things, I would also say it depends. It depends upon the objective of the system. So we should say this part of the system is broken for us. It's not broken if your intention is to marginalize us. If the intention is to marginalize us, the system is working very well. It's not broken. It's only broken because we're not getting something from it. So we have to focus on ourselves. What are these systems doing for us? If they aren't doing anything for us, we say it's broken. But if the agenda is to make sure that nothing is done for us, then the system is working perfectly well. And we just don't understand that the system is not our system. It's not designed to help us.
That's
So
right.
one of the things I would say before mentioning the school I think it's safe to say now, after the U.S. formation in, let's say, 1776, supported by millions of Africans, enslaved people to develop the country before that. But I think it's irrefutable that at this point, at 2024, we can say that 44, 45 presidents later, this system called America has done very little for us vis-a-vis the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the things that represent the infrastructure. I think we can all conclude that given all this time and all the work we've put in, all the compliance we've made very little progress as it relates to the promises of the written words. So if we agree on that, I certainly agree with that statement. If we agree on that, we'd have to conclude that throughout the history of the country, neither party has been focused on what we need that much. So, no matter what happens in the elections, we have to take a page from the movie Waiting to Exhale, the book that was written. Did Toni Morrison, was it Toni Morrison?
No, it wasn't Tony.
It wasn't
Okay.
okay. Well,
Well, I forget the author. My apologies to her. But after the election, we have a tendency as Black people that we exhale, which is a big mistake. We cannot, I don't care if Kamala is elected, we cannot exhale and say, well, we dodged that bullet and then wait for 4 years. We have to be vigilant, vigilant, and focused on somehow meeting our own collective needs, because there's nothing in the history of the country that would convince me and convince anybody, I think, if we look at it objectively, that we can rely on either one of these parties to look out for us.
mhm,
So we have to look out for ourselves. And my biggest problem is we go from one election cycle to the next. And if the person gets in, if Obama gets elected, we all relax and say, well, we're home free. But you're not home free. Obama's the CEO of a company that has never actually been focused on your needs.
mhm,
So he's not on the assembly line making a car just for you. He's a CEO for a company that
mhm,
produces certain things. They produce ignorant people. They produce ill-equipped students. They produce homeless people. They produce the company, the country churns out these people through its policies, its practices, its education. So the country produces ignorant students
mhm,
because they're not challenged. You don't have them thinking about themselves and what role do they play in the world, in their family, in their community. No school is doing that. You're learning how to somehow be a good citizen and buy the next thing and get the next Air Jordans. You're not being cultivated to be a critically thinking person. So the difference in our school from a lot of schools, I'm not trying to criticize all schools. I'm talking about the overall American education system is designed to produce students that do not think about anything. They do not think critically about anything. And they don't have to think critically about anything in order to satisfy the American agenda. They need to be less thoughtful, easily manipulated, maneuvered in one direction or another, in order for America to flow the way it wants to flow. It doesn't want intelligent people running around everywhere because they ask too many questions. They ask probing questions. They ask questions that politicians don't want to answer. So they make excuses or they say, I'll get back to you. They don't want an educated population. If they did, they would structure school in a different way. So we have to say, as Antonio said in the beginning, this is all by design. So at Wings Academy, we're attempting to break from that tradition and help a child to understand we've been waiting for you for centuries to come, just like characters in stories that we read. And because you're equipped with the skill and the ingenuity and the resolve that you could make a difference. You could solve the problems that have gone on for thousands of years and nobody's come to get it done. People have been working on it, but they haven't succeeded. And we've been waiting for you. And you can maybe do it. You could become our guardians of the universe because you have the potential. Your history shows you that people throughout history have done miraculous things, and you are now the repository of their DNA. So we expect you to do miraculous things too. And maybe you will be able to finally get over the hump of some of these things that great people have worked on, but they still haven't gotten it done. And maybe you are, we're hoping and pleading and praying that you will be the one. And we're going to give you the tools that we can give you and the skills and the attitudes that we can give you so that you can go out here and make it all happen. That's what's different about our school. It's trying to develop a young person into an activist and having a sense of community and family responsibility. So we say, if it's meant to be, it's up to me. We want every person to realize they have an obligation to make things better. And in order to do that, they have come here, they've come into the world carrying the DNA of great, great people that have survived. You don't live right now if you didn't inherit the DNA of some great survivor somewhere, because people aren't born if people die. So we say, you are the descendants of the people that refused death. I don't care what the circumstances were. If you're living today, that means the people that came from you dealt with these things, whatever they were, and they were able to master it somehow. And they have passed the baton to you. And so your job now is to run your leg of this race, do the best you can, and keep it moving. And so that's what we try to get young people to think about and become a manifestation of the best legacy of their ancestors that they could become. Carry on the tradition, do great things, keep the candle burning, do your part. You're not by yourself. Other people are helping you. Your ancestors are pulling for you. The world needs you to succeed, and you need to be smart, and you need to be wise. You need to be mature in order to satisfy those responsibilities. And so that's we teach all the things the state says you have to teach, but we're also trying to teach character development. Boys don't beat up on girls. Boys don't criticize girls. These are the mothers of tomorrow, clown. So that's we try to develop the character in the students so that they hopefully when we're gone, there will be people that maybe mention our name as having some influence on making them the person that they are, just like we mention people that influenced us. So that's the basic difference in our school. We're interested in the development of the whole person, but to instill the idea of leadership, humility, responsibility to make the world a better place where they live, where their family lives, where and the world needs them. That's the basic distinction between our school because we are consciously trying to do that, not have it happen by accident.
Nana, Nana, 1 second, Vince. Nana, I'm having a difficult time. I'm having a difficult time. Like I say, I ain't the sharpest knife in the drawer, and I'm not the dullest either. But our talented 10, for what you just laid out and expressed right there, the importance of education. If you go all the way back through history, you know, and and some might say our downfall as black people, and it was taboo to think of even thinking about giving your treasures over to the enemy, your children. Malcolm talked about how you letting your the people that oppress you teach and train your children. Now, you don't that don't you don't have to be into rocket science to understand that's an issue when it's coming to us, because all we're doing is creating black white men in this society. And people, we need to understand that some of the things in dealing with police officers, I get into debates about that. You've been indoctrinated since the beginning. My pledge allegiance to the flag and things of that nature. So it's all about indoctrination, and I guess everything is about indoctrination. It just depends on what kind of indoctrination, or who's the indoctrinator, and for what reason. So with our culture and with people's cultures, that's what a culture is in itself, is an indoctrination. So my point is that by looking at the track record of our history up until this particular point, and knowing that when we talk about the young people over in Africa, is leading the way, knowing that the solution to a lot of our issues is in our children. You know what I'm trying to say? And the powers that be, something that Dr. Amos Wilson say, if we're not training our children of the day to fix our current issues, then what are we doing? So I'm just having a difficult time for my Cornell Wesses of the time, and these particular people are not investing and thinking about more of taking back of the educational portion of what is needed to be. I'm just having a difficult time with that.
Yeah, brother Lynn, I just got to jump in and
Mhm.
say that you are exactly right about that and the potential that our young folk have, because I saw something online yesterday or the day before where this young man, I believe he was in South Africa or somewhere in Africa, he created a car that could run on water.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So so the point is that the solutions do lie within the minds of the young people, and they have to be cultivated properly in order to enhance their ability to address those problems. So when we look at the education system that we have, as Nana pointed out, it's not really about training these children to think critically and analytically. It's more about taking them through a process, giving them a piece of paper, and sending them on their way to nothingness. So that's why we have to be intentional about this holistic approach to our young people, so that we can empower them to address the things that need to be addressed in our society. So you look at Africa and you see that these young people are taking their destinies into their own hands, and they're not being beholden to the past that includes systemic racism, that includes colonialism, and all those other things. I also wanted to mention that I caught part of a broadcast of one of Nana's colleagues, Anthony Browder, and he was pointing to something that happened historically, because we talk about history and the importance of history, but he talked about something that happened historically that I don't know that many people are aware of. We have an awareness of the Nile River, and it's flowing from uh, south to north, but we don't think about the rivers that went east to west. And within that east to west paradigm, you also had a migration of Africans from West Africa over to this part of the world. And he talked about the Olmec civilization and so forth and so on. These are fascinating things that we don't learn in the history that we're taught. And if we had a greater awareness of history and our place in that history, we would have a greater awareness of who we are and what we are as a people. We mentioned a few shows ago about genetics and these gene series, and how we have 9, and then there are other populations on the world that might have 6, and then you go to the chimpanzees and they have 5. You know, there is so much about us that we need to know so that we can do what we need to do to take our destinies in our own hands. So just want to, I guess, reiterate the importance of knowing and understanding history and what our place is within in that history.
Well, you mentioned history. History is critical because history is the foundation for what we call the present. So, like a foundation in a house, once the foundation is laid, you don't see the foundation anymore, but you know the foundation is what the house is standing on. So, the history is the foundation that we're standing on. We just don't know about it. So, we don't know, for example, that we're on a foundation that would carry a 100-story building. It's that strong. But all we've built on that foundation is a patio. We have no idea that we could keep building up. But since we don't know that the foundation would hold it, we said, well, let's not take a chance. We could put up a first floor, the foundation may not hold it. But if we went down there and looked at the foundation, we could say, well, we could put 100 stories on top of this. So why are we just sitting on this patio? And every time it rains, we get wet. Why don't we put a roof on this thing? The foundation is strong enough to hold it. We don't know that we have a foundation upon which we could build. So consequently, we accept the people that tell us that you don't have any foundation under you, so don't start thinking about building anything. And we have accepted that. We said because white folks would know best. If they say we shouldn't build here, we shouldn't build here. But you see other people that have no education, no formal education like we're talking about at all. But Vince, there's another thing I noticed. There was a man that he wasn't a child, but he was an adult. He created a TV that would work without power. It would just get its power out of the atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
And he was watching it. So this is the level of awareness and creative ability and ability to connect with knowledge that's already available that you don't need formal education for. So in some sense, the formal education, if you take these two examples, the formal education is distracting you from your creative talents. It's turning off your creative energies in order to do these nonsensical things. And if you remove the quote unquote education, you have people that make a car that run on water. He just figures it out. He just somehow knows it. He connects with the ancestors or the energy that's around him and just suggests to him that you could do this. And he produces it so that you can see an example of it. That's how I see the Giza Plateau. The Giza Plateau is there, and all these structures are there as a monument to us to tell us that these things are possible because it's sitting there.
Okay.
If there was no pyramid sitting there, we wouldn't be having any conversation about ancient Kemet. It's the fact that the sculptures are sitting there staring us in the face that we says this thing must have been possible because it's there. No matter what it say, it wasn't used for anything. But the mere fact that it's there tells us that somebody knew how to do something before we got all these schools, before we got these credentials, before this thing. So who were those people? And if you go back in your history, you realize that those people were your ancient relatives. And now you are the repository of the DNA that allowed them to do those things. We just don't make that connection. Because if we did, we would look at ourselves in the mirror in the morning and say, you know what? You can do anything. You can do anything you suggest that you want to do. As we grew up, we are familiar with hearing that. Our parents told us you could do anything you want to do. Anything you put your mind to, you could do it. They somehow knew that that was possible. History tells us that it has to be possible, unless you assume we came from another dimension someplace. We came from a different planet. But if we came from this same planet where all these ancestors came from, as they died, they transferred that DNA to us. So there's no excuse for why we can't do things. And now you'll find out, I'm sure, Antonio, now that you're retired, the ancestors know that in your sleep, they can suggest all kinds of things to you that you can do because you don't have the impediment of having to reconcile those things with your job. So you wake up every day with ideas about things that you could do that you could have always done, but you can't do them if you don't have the energy or the time or you have these constraints. But that's why I said now we can check in to start your post retirement employment because you're never going to retire from life. So there's always something that needs to be done. So, but the education system that we have, Amos Wilson put it right. He said, any education system is designed to perpetuate the society that has produced the education. So American society needs what in order to run smoothly? It needs unsophisticated people that will follow directions and will consume products. That's basically what it is needed. Unsophisticated people that will follow directions and consume products because we're in a consumer-based environment. Most people don't even know that the biggest driver of American economy is consumer spending. Is more than the military, more than housing. 70% of the economy is structured around consumer spending. So if you understand that, it's imperative that you spend money because America can't function if you don't spend money. And if you think I'm making that up, you ask yourself, why does the financial people complain if Americans are saving too much? If you notice, every time Americans start saving too much, they say there's too much money going to savings because America will not operate if people don't spend money. So they give you money to spend because if you don't spend money, America can't run. So even when it seems illogical to you that there's a pandemic, that nobody can go out, and the government sends you money and you're not working, how could that work? How can you get a paycheck and you did no work? Even a child would realize that, you get money if you do something. How do you get money if you don't do anything? Well, if you don't do anything and you get money, that encourages you and allows you to go out and spend that money that you didn't earn. And we'll just put it in the IOU bin. But we'll give you more money. We'll give you money. Spend it. So we have $32 trillion deficit, $34 trillion deficit, $50 trillion deficit. But as long as you're spending money, the American machinery will run. You can buy a new car, even though you didn't work. But that doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. But the people that are in the Federal Reserve, they know it's all fiat money. So it's not backed up by anything. So you can just print more of it. And people don't have an understanding. Say, well, this is a good deal. So now what happens? People don't want to work.
Uh-oh.
People don't want to work. They refuse to work. So now, let's assume just hypothetically that somebody said, let's field test the idea of giving people money. They don't have to work. That will encourage them to refuse work. And if we give them money, then they don't work and they don't have the desire to work. But we give them money. So what have we accomplished? We've established a mindset where people say, I don't feel like working, but they get money. So we moved a little step closer to not owning anything, but being happy.
Mm.
It's one step. But
Mm.
now you go around Cleveland right now, for example, you see help wanted signs a lot of places
Yes.
because people don't want to work. So if you go to the next step and say, well, you could live here and we could give you the money to pay your things, and you everything you need is within 15 minutes. So now you live in a place, you don't own anything, you don't have anything, you get money to use as coupons to get the things you need. So now you're that much closer to Klaus Schwab's desire that you own nothing, you have nothing, and you're happy.
Mm.
We're just being slow walked into a consciousness that convinces us that this is a good deal. It's a good deal. I don't have to worry about this. I don't have to worry about that. It's all paid. The digital currency takes it right out of my account. I don't have to handle with any money. I don't need any credit cards. And you can say, well, what are you going to do today? Well, I'm gonna go home, watch a little TV, um, get something to eat, and it's all within 15 minutes. So you're in a 15-minute geographical cage that you don't own anything inside of it. You can't get out of it, but you're happy in it because you have TV, you have cable, you have food, and you tell yourself that life is fine. So in the movie, you're now living in the matrix.
Yeah,
Wait for Morpheus.
I just want to bring up the concept of universal basic income because basically you've described that paradigm, and you also talked about the pushback that comes from the idea of people saving money, and this is where the threat of central bank digital currencies comes from because they're looking at having those currencies be programmable, which means that they could create currencies that have an expiration date. And if they have an expiration date, then you can't use them to grow money, which is
Right.
what the whole idea of investing is all about. The reality for most Americans or many Americans right now is that they are depleting their savings because things cost so much more now. So this whole inflationary paradigm is a reality, but it's also the fuel on which the government operates. So when we
Yeah.
look back a couple years ago, when all this money was coming around, all the government was doing was creating new money, which caused the inflation that results in prices going up to a point where you can't afford to buy anything. So now we're looking at, instead of owning something, renting it. So instead of owning the car, they want you to pay for a driverless car to show up at your door to take you somewhere within that 15-minute city. And it's an electric car. So there's no emissions. So, we're doing something to save the planet. But the reality of that is that cage that you talked about is a cage. Look at what's going on in Cleveland right now. Everywhere you look, there are new bike paths. They're talking about developing the lakefront. Of course, a bike path is going to be a part of that, but the incentive is not for you to drive downtown. The incentive is for you to hop on your bike and ride downtown and go downtown and get some of that GMO food that they're going to be selling, the vendors are going to be selling. So it really is kind of a catch 22 that they are putting us in, or at least attempting to put us in. But the antidote is folks figuring out that there are other ways to do what needs to be done, and that includes having assets that aren't a part of that digital paradigm that will enable you to engage in commerce and so forth with folks who are like-minded. So, even though they're planning to do all the things that they're planning to do, we have existed for centuries. We are a resilient people. We are a creative people. And, we're going to be forced to do what we have to do to move things forward. I mean, that's the bottom line. You talked about the pyramids, the Giza Plateau. They still can't explain how we did that. They want to give credit to somebody from outer space for creating those things, and we still don't know, the expanse of the technology that existed at that time, and we don't think about the fact that there's been a certain de-evolution when it comes to our knowledge because we had the knowledge back then and we were capable of doing what we did, but then when you look at now, we're in such a place that we can't even explain what we did.
You're right. There's one element that I think is, as I think about it every day, it seems true. And that is, no matter what plans powerful people or people that we would describe or they self describe as powerful people, they have a lot of elaborate plans. But there seems to be an element
Yes.
that is required.
Mhm.
And the element that seems to be necessary is that no matter how elaborate the plan, it can only work when we agree to do something. And if we don't agree to do it, they can't force us to do it. So try to tell people all the time, I say, well, if you look around, most of the things that are giving us trouble, they're giving us trouble because we are complicit in doing things that aren't in our interest. We've agreed to do this thing, but it doesn't make sense. And that's our agreement to do it is what causes the problem that we talk about. So what if we simply didn't do it? They say, well, that doesn't make sense. I say, well, look at it like this. I think one of the most exciting things in terms of our ability to function the way we would like doesn't require us to do new things as much as it requires us to stop doing things that we already do.
Mhm.
We're doing things that are causing us trouble. So we could say, for example, I won't eat GMO products. Now that would be maybe a difficult thing to actually pull off because they proliferated GMO all around us to make it convenient. But what if we said, well, I just won't watch certain things on TV anymore. I just won't watch it. So what things would I not watch? So you pick things that you won't watch. So as soon as you don't watch them, you know if nobody watches it, the advertisers that make money from you watching that won't make that money from that show. So you will create some kind of pushback that didn't require you to do anything new. It only required you to stop doing something that is fueling your own oppression. So I tell young people, I say, you could cripple the whole uh, justice system and the police that you complain about and the courts that you complain about and the lawyers that you complain about, you could cripple that whole system simply by not breaking laws. Don't violate anything. But you're doing things, you're conducting yourself in a way that's making you an easy target to fall into the trap that's designed to catch people like you. Then you disrupt your family. Your son doesn't see you because you're incarcerated. He grows up without a father. And now he's acting crazy because nobody can manage him, because the Father's voice is not something that he hears. Your demand is not something that he hears. So now he's running the world thinking he's a little gangster because there's nobody that can control him. He grows up and he does the same thing you do. So now he's in jail. So the cycle continues. So just don't commit any crimes. Don't break laws. If it says walk across this crosswalk, walk across the crosswalk, especially if your pants are sagging, because you're giving police a reason to stop you. Just don't do that. So the police only function well in the climate of crime. If there's no crime, people will start saying, well, we don't need police. Nobody's committed a crime in so many years. So why are we paying money to this? And why are we paying money to that? So it's some of our own behavior could liberate us simply by stopping it, which we could do. We're capable of doing that. So I think a lot of the things that are proposed still require our complicity. And since we don't know it requires our complicity, we simply comply because we are told that it's good. But if we examine it a little bit better, we say, well, tell me how this is good. What is it going to do for me? I don't know if I want to do that. I'm not sure if that's going to work out the way you're describing. We could think about it a little bit and simply decide not to do it. And Amos Wilson has said this, we've done this effectively in our own communities. We have carried on a historical boycott of all of our businesses in our communities. So now we have to go outside of our communities to spend money because we don't support the business in the community that's right there. So we've carried on boycotts of our own people since the beginning of time.
Oh,
So that the
mm,
Arabs come in or Asians come in our community and we support them. Meanwhile, if that store was taken over by a brother or a sister in the community, we would boycott them and go outside the community to shop.
boy.
That's a consciousness. That's our fault.
Mhm.
We don't have to do that. We could say we're going to support our own. If we just said that, we're going to support our own people. We know business would crop up and they would grow because they would know black people are only going to buy from black people. Even if the service is not perfect, even if the repair to my car is not perfect, you'll go back to Toyota 10 times for them to work on the same thing. And you'll go in there and pretend like the service manager, you're embarrassed that you have to keep bringing the car back, but it's not fixed right. But you never tell the service manager, look, I brought my car here 10 times. I ain't bringing my car to you no more because you can't fix it or you won't fix it. And I keep paying you and it's not fixed right. We won't do that because we feel like the service manager at Toyota is a better human being and he knows more about the car than the backyard mechanic that could probably fix your car too. But you won't give him a chance to do it once. If he's late, you say, well, I ain't this
Yeah,
last.
yeah. Don't let them mess up nothing.
This is no, you only got one strike.
Yeah.
But
Mm-hmm.
we'll go other places and we'll give them 10 strikes. We've
Mm-hmm.
given this system 500 years of strikes. They haven't done anything.
Good point.
We give our people one time, we say, well, I'm done with you.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And they don't have any of the things that the system is used to work with. All they got is their own talent, a few tools, and they're trying their best. But you don't give them a chance to do anything else. But yet the system has given you 500 years of steady rejection. And you say it's okay.
That's mental illness, Doc.
That's
That's,
mental illness.
that's mental illness. And some people look at me when I say that we mentally ill, but that's a prime example. Doc, before we go, I don't know if Vince ready to close out or not, but we'd be remiss if we didn't have give you the opportunity to talk briefly about your special guest that you had over in Ghana.
Oh, the special guest? You
Yeah.
mean Dr. Arakana
Yes.
Chimbori?
Yes. Yes. How was that?
Dr. Arikana is one of the few courageous freedom fighters that are women. We have a lot of very powerful women right now. Nadeli Palmer in South Africa, you've seen her.
Mhm.
She's the one that's been championing the case against Israel in the war against Palestine. She's been the South African female voice in reference to that. Uh, there's a number of other sisters that are speaking out. The I forget her name right now in Barbados, I think. She's
Yes, I know what
powerful,
you're saying. Hmm.
and uh, Arikana Chiambori is from Zimbabwe originally. She grew up in Zimbabwe, and she was a student of John Mugabe. So she gets some of her fire from that. And she, of course, for those that don't know, she was the African Union ambassador to the United States. And they fired her because she started talking about the French colonial relationship with 14 African nations. And she's the first one that brought it to my attention that the Berlin Conference was connected to the creation of the African nation states that we are familiar with today, which didn't exist before 1900. So these African countries that we say we're from today, they didn't even exist during the time of slavery. So nobody knows where they were from because you had an African continent that didn't have any nation states at all. So she was the first one that brought to my awareness, and she was spreading it around in her position as a representative of the African Union, that France was the most evil of all colonial powers because when the thrust for independence came after Kwame Nkrumah's uh, gaining independence in Ghana, when independence came as a domino effect across the continent, the French had their former colonies sign an agreement called the Pact for the Continuation of Colonialism, which gave France certain enumerated privileges. One was your language has to be French. Two, your military has to be French. Three, your money would be printed by France. Four, anything found under the soil in the country would belong to the French first. And if France didn't want it, then it would be available for other people. Fourth, 85% at the time, 85% of your revenue would have to be put on deposit in French banks. And so France was the colonial power for 14 African nations as they are configured today. Three of them are Niger, Burkina Faso, Mali. A number of the others are part of the ECOWAS. We're going back now to our original starting point. So for years, so France has not been a colonial power in the colonial configuration since the 60s. So this is 60 years later. So they have been taking out of Africa maybe $500-600 billion a year of the monies from these 14 African nations that's on deposit with them. And they have the right, according to this pact, to invest this money any way they want without explaining what they're doing. And they would take the profits and not share those profits with the African nations according to the agreement. And if African nations wanted some of their own money, they would have to apply for a loan from France to be loaned some of their money at prevailing interest rates, and they would pay it back. So Arikanas start making this drum beat I personally think, I don't have anything to base it on, but I think it was fuel for these military coups in Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali. It also got her fired from her job as the African Union representative, because you got to understand that the African Union is less functional than it could be, because it is still controlled in many ways by the former colonial powers that rule those nations that are represented as members of the African Union. So that's just transparent almost. You can see that without hardly blinking. So she was in Ghana just 2 weeks ago, because I've been back a week and a half. She was there the 28th and 27th and 26th and 27th of August. I didn't know she was in the country until I found out about an hour before she was due to speak at the University of Cape Coast. So she was there to give a 2-day lecture on their, uh, I don't know if it's an annual event, but whatever period of time it comes up, she was this year's speaker in the University of Cape Coast program to reflect on the lifetimes and legacy of Kwame Nkrumah, which was Ghana's first prime minister and president. And Kwame Nkrumah brought in the wave of independence. So they have this speaking um, 2-day conference seminar that comes up periodically. So this is the 14th time they've done that. She was their speaker for the 2 days. So I found out she was in the country. So I couldn't believe she was actually in the country. So I went to the university, and sure enough, she was there. So I sat in the audience, and she gave a fiery speech about the status of colonial, neo-colonial control as it relates to Africa in general, how it relates to Ghana in particular, uh, the continuing extraction of minerals and resources from the land of Africa, and what needed to be done. And so they published or posted on social media her uh, talk. I sent a copy to you guys, I think, so it could be run for people that didn't see it. But she's one of our most current, powerful, courageous women that are speaking the truth to power, as we say. She's unapologetic, and we should be proud to know that we're on earth living at the same time that this woman is here. So I'm proud to say she's a good friend of mine. um, I met with her while she was there after her speak, and she's a medical doctor. She's been a practicing physician for 25 years. She owns a hotel in South Africa, so she's a businesswoman, and she's one of our very, very powerful voices. And I'm going to talk to her about the possibility of coming to Cleveland and giving a talk at the school. Uh, when she left Ghana, she was headed to Zimbabwe. So I don't know if she's returned yet. I put in a call to her and left her a message. So as soon as I hear from her, if I can get her to come here, I'll let you know so that she can be on your show too.
Yeah, and maybe if she's not able to make it, we could still have her as a guest on the show, and in that way,
Oh,
we could
she would
provide
love it.
folks.
She
Yeah,
would love it.
so
That that will do. We'll consider that a given. We'll
yes,
arrange that. That's easy.
yes. Well, I do have a link to that speech, so I am able to include it as a link in the description of this video. Because as soon as we
Oh, that would be
conclude,
great.
yeah, as soon as we conclude this broadcast, this video will upload to YouTube, and folks will be able to watch it and listen and learn. So we'll definitely look at doing that.
Yeah, she's a powerful voice, and she's all over YouTube. So once you see her, she's everywhere on YouTube, and she's talking the same breathing the same fire and smoke everywhere. So she is a real courageous woman. She's fearless, and we should be proud to know we know of her.
Yes.
And that's what I think, and that's what I'm hoping, and I keep my eyes on that, and you got PLO, her, and several other people that are speaking to large audiences in Africa, and these young folks are eating it all up. You know what I mean? And I think
Yeah.
what's headed for the future. That's why I'm telling people, please keep your eyes on Africa, because of some interesting and serious things that are going on.
Yes.
I say.
All right. Well, we've had quite a conversation this afternoon, I'll say. And Nana, I want to thank you for being with us today and bringing the knowledge as you always do. I think Cleveland is a better place because of you, but I also look across the water and acknowledge the fact that Africans in the village of Atonkwa and surrounding areas and in the country of Ghana are also benefiting from what you do as someone who is a true exemplification of being African American. It's not just that you are one or the other, but you are both. It's expressed in your name and it's expressed in your work. So thank you for what you do. Thank you to those who have been with us for this broadcast. We've had a number of people who have been with us for the entirety of our broadcast, and we definitely
Oh,
appreciate
really?
you.
Oh,
Yeah, and we hope that as you are watching, you will go ahead and subscribe to our channels as well, because at some point it's going to be of even greater benefit to us as you empower us through subscription. So subscribe, like, comment, as Stephen E. Boyd and our brother Gerard and others have done during our broadcast. We really appreciate your engagement and your support. In parting, as
but
always,
before
go
you go,
ahead.
let me say one thing.
Okay.
I'm flattered by the fact that the people have been on here for 2 hours and something.
Hmm.
That's flattering, and I certainly appreciate your comments. But to our recent retiree, I'm able to keep working because I'm not retired. I'm not retired. I'm never going to retire
I hear you, brother. I hear
until
you, brother.
my breath is out.
Mm.
But if anybody wants to get to me directly, you could email me at Ashe, ASHE1 LTD at gmail.com. And if you email me and there's something that I have that I think might be helpful to anything you're doing, I'm going to give it to you as quickly as I can. So if there's anybody that has something that they think I might be able to assist with by providing some information or some resources or something, I'm here to be used up. I'm never retiring until my number is called.
Hold on, Doc. Now you say I can't. You say I can't retire, Doc. I can't
No,
retire,
you can't
Doc.
retire. There's no such thing as retire. You you you've made a transition.
That's all.
You've retired from the plantation, and
Yeah.
now it's time to work on the planet.
Hey, Doc, give your email contact one more time.
ASHE1 LTD at Gmail.
Right. Okay.
Yes, we'll post that in the description as well. So if you don't
Okay,
have a chance
I'm
to
here.
write it down, it'll be there. You can come to this video, get that information. I'm also going to plug in that video from Dr. Arikana as well. So
Excellent.
just
Excellent.
know that we definitely want you to hear what she's got to say, because she breathes fire, trust and believe.
And
All right.
once she comes on, she'll connect you with PLO. PLO will come on too.
Okay.
You all these people we know all these people.
All right. Well, we'll definitely be happy to have them. And
You can
I'll
get
just make this point before I close the mic down. Brother Antonio, I was where you are today 10 years ago, and I stopped saying I retired. I just say I quit my job because the work don't stop because you leave the plantation. And what's going to happen, and I'm predicting this, and you will see it come into fruition. Your work is going to increase. You will have more to do because you have less to do for somebody else and more to do for the people. On
I say
that note, on that note,
on
as
that note,
always, love yourself, be yourself, know yourself, and make today your best day, y'all.
I say, but I say,
Peace. Peace.
All right. Peace.
Peace.